And we're here with Christen Stovall, author of the Soulbound trilogy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am doing great. I have been enjoying your book immensely,
Yay!
and I'm going to kind of give a very, very top level description of what it's like because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but it is the story of a woman who loses her husband and ends up being reunited with him in a supernatural sense in the not too distant future, and the two of them end up going on a fantasy quest together.
Yes.
So I think that's the most non-spoiler description I can give. So why don't you tell us a little more about it yourself?
Well, the Song of Souls trilogy, Soulbound's just the title of the first book. The Song of Souls trilogy was inspired by my own experiences of going from newlywed to widow and just not having any real idea at that point what to do with my life because everything I thought I was going to have was gone. And the idea came about just through listening to music, and the idea for a scene just popped into my head, and I kind of went with it. Before I knew it, I had enough for an entire trilogy.
It's amazing that would kind of roll from that experience. Now, when you say you became a widow very quickly, what's the rough time frame we're looking at?
We were married about 1.5 years before he passed.
Okay.
It was not fun, but
I can
I'm in
imagine.
A good place now.
I can see that. And actually, that was one thing that struck me as I got toward the end of the book, is that this is an extremely dark experience for you, and yet the book that you created out of it, I wouldn't call it light, but it's something that I wouldn't hesitate to give to a younger audience because it has that kind of tone that anybody could approach it.
Right. I wanted to walk a delicate balance between making it engaging and deep enough for an adult to read, but also appropriate if someone a little bit younger read it. I would say that the other books do get darker.
Okay.
But, with what they're going through and character development, it almost had to go that way. It almost had to get a little bit darker in order to really do the story and the characters justice.
Fair enough. And I mean, younger people can handle heavier subjects. I think it's a disservice to them if we don't trust them to do that.
Yeah.
Again, not trying to give any spoilers, but at the beginning of the book, I found there were a lot of really neat ways in which you incorporated her experiences, somebody's wanting her to just get over it and move on. And, the kind of feeling that you'll have when you have a loss with somebody and they kind of move on with your life much sooner than you do. And there's a resentment that you don't.
Yeah.
A lot of those moments were in the book, and I thought that was really well done on your part.
Thank you. It's a little easier when you've experienced it. There are definitely things that come directly from that experience, and then obviously things that are completely made up. I didn't get any magic powers after my husband died. I'm sad to say. That would have been a nice perk, but no. But the scream in the very beginning of the book, which I don't feel is really a spoiler because it's literally the first page, that actually was something that happened when I found out. I did scream like that. So I don't remember it that well, but people who were there said that I nailed it. So
if I had to guess, I would have said, yeah, that probably did happen. That was pretty clear. So do you find it difficult to talk to people who haven't had deeper losses in your day-to-day life? And if so, has the story helped in that regard?
I did at first. I definitely found it more difficult at first. I'm a fairly introverted person, and initially this was my way of being able to say, this is what I felt, this is what it feels like, this is how visceral and raw it is. And it was a safe place to do it without feeling like I was really exposing myself in a way that made me feel vulnerable or uncomfortable. So that was definitely something that I did.
So you use this main character as kind of an avatar through your own grief process, and can you feel a difference in how you felt writing page one versus how you felt finishing the whole thing?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in how I felt in starting the trilogy and how I felt when I finished it, because I'm the final book is done. We're in the editing process now. one, I was a lot less sure of myself when I started. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd written before, but never really on this level with something completely original. But with the final one, I felt more confident, and yet at the same time weirdly less confident, because I knew exactly where I wanted it to go and how I wanted it to end, and I'm my own worst critic. So I was like, I don't know if I got it. I don't know if I did it. It has to be bigger and better than all the other ones. But I'm hoping that I nailed it.
Well, I'm sure you did, and I'll let you know when I get there. So when it comes, this is a fantasy novel, as I might have mentioned before. Really interesting choice of genre for this kind of story. I mean, everything fantasy gets compared to Lord of the Rings, so I won't try to put those two together. But I will say, is that the kind of thing you like to read yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything goes through the fantasy filter for me. All of it. Tolkien actually was a huge influence on me. There's also another author named Juliet Marlier who's brilliant, and I don't think enough people know about her, but she's brilliant and I love her work. For me, fantasy is just an easier place to explore some of the deeper emotions and issues with the day-to-day life that we face here and now.
So you're talking about those issues, and you're creating these parallels. Was there any certain point at which writing these things kind of became too hot to handle, or something that you just you felt almost tempted to put the story back for a while?
There was never a point where I felt like I wanted to stop or regretted starting. I did hit points where I wasn't ready. I couldn't focus on it. I didn't really know where the characters were anymore. I wasn't hearing the story really speaking to me. And so I would stop for a little while and maybe not write at all, maybe write something just silly like Star Wars fan fiction, just something that I didn't have any pressure with. But I never wanted to stop. I always needed to tell the story. I needed to get it out. And as I progressed through the book, she became less of an avatar of myself and more her own person. And now people are like, so it's about you and your husband, right? No, we're very different people. It's not about us.
No, I mean, I'm not, I would not, I said avatar deliberately because I'm sure somebody out there, if this person is not me, somebody out there is going to flip this open and say, this is a Mary Sue, which is, I don't believe that's the case. This is, this is something, you put some stuff together from your own experiences, but this is her own individual. She has flaws. She's a legitimate character. But Avatar is just something that you got together roughly of your own experiences. And where I'm taking this is, I'd like to kind of see the use you were talking about, the silliness in my head, and I hope that you take this the right way.
Okay.
I don't see this as being a full-fledged Peter Jackson experience. In my head, it's like I see these characters being played out by the folks down at the local medieval fair, and the bit players there, and that's not. It's just that's the kind of tone you have, and I think it just works in the theater of the mind.
This is so funny because I'm a Rennie.
Excellent.
I love Ren fairs. I've worked at a Ren fair, so that's my target audience right there.
I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. I will be at Ren Fair and just stay there all day. Sometimes I'll get into a character and just go, and that's what I do. I'm gonna be that character. I've also done Ren Fairs dressed as Dorothy because why not?
There's always the one guy walking around dressed as Darth Maul because he has the costume and only gets to wear it twice a year.
Exactly, at Ren Fair and Comic-Con.
Yes, exactly.
Both of which I enjoy.
So what kind of conventions are you hitting in the near future?
Probably not anymore as of this year.
Okay.
Just because I've hit 2 of them already and I'm trying to buckle down and get the book done. that might change if I hear of one within a reasonable distance that has somebody that I want to go meet, or I just end up having a little extra time and decide I want to go. Or if Ben Barnes is at one, that's going to be guaranteed. Like, I will just find a way to go. I mean, priorities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but I don't have any planned for sure right now. The goal is to get the 3rd book done, and then I actually intend to start going and doing the Comic-Con circuits with my books, which will be a little sad because I'll want to be in a costume, but I feel like you have to be a little professional. So
I don't buy that rule personally.
Well, I need to be somewhat comfortable if I'm trying to sell books.
Okay, I do get that.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I worked a booth dressed in a full Starfleet uniform many a time, so those boots do hurt after a while.
My favorite costumes tend to incorporate corsets, so
yes,
sitting
I have
is
no room
uncomfortable. And I go steel-boned because otherwise you're actually in more pain.
Michelle Specht recently referred to corsets as feminine scaffolding.
It's fitting, I think.
Literally.
Yeah. I have a terrible back, so there is a level of comfort with a corset on.
So, do you have any future plans for future projects? You don't have to get specific, but good to know something else is in the pike.
Oh yeah, I'm actually going to stick in the universe for a little while with Soulbound, stick in that world, but jump around with different characters. The next book that I have planned is actually something of a prequel, but a prequel in the same way that The Hobbit is the prequel to The Lord of the Rings. It is, but it isn't. It has some connecting factors, but it's not actually. The stories are very much their own stories. So I do intend to do one book with that and kind of go into how one of the characters' families ends up where they are. And there is going to be one character from the trilogy that will be in that book in a way that people will not expect to see him or her.
That's a good teaser.
Hopefully it's a good plan. We'll see if I can make it play out the way I want.
So, again, trying to stay spoiler free, but this woman ends up being reunited with her late husband. They have a little adventure together. She has to go through some trials and tribulations to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If the afterlife really worked that way, do you think it would be a good thing? Would that be something to look forward to in your mind?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm not letting you be bored here.
Right. I think it could be good or bad. I think it would be easy for people to misuse it, to use it as an excuse to not move forward and live their life. But I think it could also be a good thing in that who wants to say goodbye? And some people never remarry or anything after they lose a spouse. So maybe it would be really good for them. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you can't make that judgment call because it would be different for each individual.
Fair enough.
I'm just like, I'm going to skate around a definitive answer here.
Oh, and that's fine. I mean, you can skate all you want. It would be interesting because, if you knew that somebody had a mate out there who might be talking to them, you can say, I actually do know who killed me, or by the way, I left a couple of books for you in the suitcase underneath the staircase. So, you may want to look at that. And
right. There could be some perks to it.
There would be some communication and even if you had to go through proxies. Right.
Yeah. Which is a thing in the book. Not everybody can see the soulmates.
I should have mentioned that. That's why because every soulmate can only talk to their other soulmate,
or at least anyone else who's soulbound.
Right.
And if you're a magic user, that's another one. Magic users can see the souls that are still there, and other soulbound can. But I mean, soulbound become magic users, so it all sort of ties in together. That was a tough one to logic out, but I think I got it. It's all these details you don't realize you have to worry about.
Yeah, once you start getting in the realm of things that don't actually happen in the world we see. It's like, okay, well, now you have to work out the logic, because when you just make it up as you go along, people figure that out in a hurry.
Oh, right. Even if it's a fantasy element, it has to have a logical base. It has to make sense. There has to be a level of believability to it. Otherwise, you fail.
How many nights and how many glasses of wine did this take?
That book or the whole trilogy?
At least go for the book.
Oh, well, for the first one, I was definitely known to pull all-nighters on a fairly frequent basis. I try not to drink when I'm writing, but sometimes after a really difficult scene, there must be wine after. There is more wine at the end of the trilogy. There's one chapter in particular that I'm always like, every time I go through it, I'm like, okay, I need wine. You know, it's tears streaming down and I need wine. But as I love my characters in my books, I could be crying just because it's over. Or because I did a terrible thing. There's no way of knowing.
No, I suppose not.
I do enjoy doing terrible things to my characters.
Oh, okay, I was about to ask if you're going to be a J.R.R. Tolkien and protect them all, or if you're going to be a George R.R. Martin and just knock them off one by one.
I like to think I kind of walk a balance of both a little bit. My editor did once call me female George R.R. Martin because I wanted to do mean things. And she's like, just stop. Just leave this poor character alone. I'm like, but I like being mean to this one.
There is no growth without pain.
Exactly. It's not a fun adventure if they don't have to suffer a little. So I can't really say which one I'm going to be without giving something away, you know, for the end of the trilogy. I have to be really careful with that one. And I really have to monitor myself with spoilers because I'm so excited about it. I want to tell everyone the ideas. And I have to remember they want to read them. I can't just tell them.
And you might change your mind, and that would just be, then it would be wrong.
Well, at this point, it's all pretty locked in. We're just going through the final details, cleaning it up, and my editor's telling me when I've made a stupid choice and how to fix it. And I love editors who will tell you when you're being stupid. So that's a good editor if they'll tell you if you're being stupid, you know.
One of the best criticisms I ever got was somebody just saying, "Stop it, you're a better writer than this." Which was basically, yes, saying I was stupid, but that I didn't have to be stupid. It was a choice to be stupid.
Right. Yeah, I think I've heard something similar to that from her. Or this is making no sense. Why is your character doing this? You just did this to put the action in. And I'm like, man.
Got me.
I didn't want to think about it too much. I should have known you would have. So, I do enjoy being mean, though. Can't help it. Like, I want to get visceral reactions from my readers. Like, if I do something, I want you to feel it. Mm-hmm. And I very purposefully kept Soulbound a little lighter and a little... I like to tell people it's deceptively simple.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree to that.
There are if you read it and remember some of the details, there are things set up in that first one that come into play as it progresses, but initially don't seem like they're much of anything. I like writers that do that, and I like stories that do that, so that when I finally get to it, I'm like, oh, wow, how did I not see it coming? But then it made sense.
Okay. Now, as a fan of trilogies, I have to ask the classic question. Did you write the whole one and then decide to do two more, or was it a trilogy from the moment you started writing?
It became a trilogy about a third of the way through the first book. I realized that I couldn't really tell the story I wanted to tell without making more than one book. And I knew some of the things I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure of every single plot point for the other two books. I just knew where it needed to end up and knew that I needed more than a book to get it there.
Good thought.
Hopefully. I'm always ready to doubt everything I do, which I think is probably a good thing. It means I look at my stuff pretty objectively.
So let's say we kick the can way down the road, and this thing is the smash success we really should be. Have you cast any character in the movie version of the book?
Oh yeah. Oh. Yeah. I always mentally cast. Which is one of the reasons Ben Barnes must be met if he's ever at a con. Just gonna hand him all 3 and be like, this character, I want you to play him.
Here's your turkey leg.
Yeah.
Here's your mug of root beer.
Exactly. But yeah, actually, Roran, her soulmate, is the one that I would see him as.
Fair enough.
He's got a very expressive face, and I just think that he could do all of the different emotions that a character like that would have to go through. I mean, this is a character who cannot physically interact with the world around him, who just has to watch the person he loves go through terrible things, and he's really fairly helpless to do much of anything. He just has to be there for moral support.
So I'm sorry.
I think that in and of itself is a fairly terrible thing to do to a character. That would be awful. It
really is. There are some definitions of hell that fall into that category.
Yes, that is something I explore with that character.
And now I feel bad that I haven't quite gotten that far yet, but I will be getting there.
I think that comes into play a little bit more in the other books. I am willing to say that in the second book, he does become a point of view character. He's not in the first, and that was a very deliberate choice. I needed their story to be told from her perspective. And another choice that I made was that you never actually see their life together when he's alive. You only see it through memories. You only see it through flashbacks.
So perspective becomes really key there.
Yeah, you never see their life together. You never see them living together. And it was important because the story is not about who she was before. It's about who she becomes because of or in spite of, or both.
It's also really encouraging for somebody if you lose somebody, and this gives you a way of, you usually, whether you believe they're still out there or not, but you often present the illusion that they are there. It's crucial to you.
Right.
And that becomes a relationship you have with that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that is very hard to communicate. I think you did a pretty good job.
Thank you. Well, they say write what you know, and sadly I experienced it, so I wrote it.
Okay. I have a book about watching Knight Rider and watching nachos coming out. So
well done.
Excellent. But in all seriousness, so do you have an internet presence out there people can keep tabs on your upcoming works?
I do. I have a website, ChristenStovallBooks.com. You can find me on Facebook. If you want to find me for books, it's better to find the Song of Souls Trilogy page on Facebook. I'm a little more iffy about friend requests because I have a tendency to get weird ones, and then all of a sudden guys are messaging me, and I don't know who they are, and it makes me uncomfortable. And then I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, so you can find me on any of those. Those are good places to find me.
Excellent. Well, I do want to thank you so much for doing this. Is there anything else on your mind that you'd like to talk about while we're here?
Well, the second book is currently on sale for 99 cents. If you have a Kindle, you can get that for 99 cents. It's usually $2.99. The third book is coming out on August 15th, so the entire trilogy will be done. This is the time to get started. You won't have to wait that long.
That's a fantastic deal, and I can vouch for it being all. I mean, I would easily pay, if it was a print copy, $10, $12. That's about the going rate for these things. 99 cents is an absolute steal. I highly encourage you to do that.
Right. Yay, thank you.
Sure. Okay,
and
so
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Oh, I do appreciate it. And how about, I'm going to let you go.
All right.
But I'll be glad to have you back anytime because you're a pleasure to talk to. You're very talented. And I do expect to see more from you in the future.
Thank you. Well, I look forward to our future interviews.